Welcome back to the neighborhood, boys and girls. Our next guest is Matt Auterson from NuSun Power. Matt, welcome to the neighborhood, my man.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
We were just doing some reminiscing. Matt and I met years and years and years ago in a previous lifetime, 4, 5, 6 mortgage companies back for me. But we always like to talk about people's journey because I think that's the most interesting part of things. Like who you are and the path you travel makes you the product in the end, the brand that you built.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about Matt, where you came from, high school, college, grade school. What was the path that got you here to where you're at now?
Yeah, great question. Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be here, and I love the premise. My kids are huge fans of Mr. Rogers, so super cool. So I grew up a little bit of a mix of both New York City and then Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Okay, yeah.
So my dad was a pastor. He was in ministry, and so we were in. I was born in Queens. And we ended up at some point coming down to Kingsway Church in Cherry Hill. And so he was associate pastor there in the middle of the 90s. So for a hot second, I went to Clara Barton and, we lived on Murray Avenue in Cherry Hill, but then moved to Staten Island and grew up. I would say that's primarily where I associate my growing up years. And we were there from about 1998 until I graduated high school. And so I met my wife at 12 years old. And it wasn't arranged or anything like that. But
She was 12 or you were 12?
She's older than me, actually. Yeah, she's a little older than me.
All right.
And,
Robert. All right.
And so we started, dating at like 15 and got married at 19. And so I've been married 18 years, even though I look 12 now.
Nice.
I actually went to school to be in ministry, to be a pastor. People told me that my whole life, that I was going to do that. And I did serve in ministry for a little while, with like youth ministry and things like that. I didn't do it for the money, but you couldn't really start a family and have I remember in the
they're not doing pastor cribs on MTV.
No,
there's none of that going on.
None of that. And there are, but those people are.
It's like Joel Osteen. There's only like 3 or 4 of them.
There's a couple, there's some, big time, stuff like that. But I don't, anything that we were doing was really smaller, more local community type churches and things like that. And I didn't do it for the money, but I knew I wanted to have a family, and I still feel that calling to do something long term in that regard. But it's more, we get that fulfilled through our volunteer work, where we go now and really just focus on our family at the moment, which is we have 3 kids, and so that's not cheap in New Jersey, as you know. No. And so so I was in ministry for a little bit, and then when I left, I got into sales. I knew that there was some transferable skills in communication and stuff like that. So sales seemed like a great opportunity. I enjoy talking to people and influencing and inspiring ideas and things like that. And so I started working in home remodeling sales for Power Home Remodeling Group.
Okay.
I was $1 million rep there, and selling roofing, siding, windows, and exterior remodeling. And that had a very kind of a one-call close, just running appointments kind of a thing. And I wanted to have relationships that I could build that could refer me business and have a little bit more like longevity equity in what I was doing.
Sure.
So I had an opportunity in a mutual friend of ours who we know to go into mortgages. And so in 2014-15, I went into mortgages. And, was there for almost a decade, actually, for about 8 years or so. Really loved it. I feel like that's where I learned, so many things. I learned about finance. I learned about the real estate transaction. I learned a lot about, marketing and digital marketing. And this is when social media was really kind of coming online a lot, and, event planning and stuff like that. I was eventually recruited by a guy named Bill Mervin up in Bucks County, and was with him for a number of years. That opened up some great opportunities of coaching. I coached with Tim Brahim out at his house in California, and then eventually was recruited by somebody down in Philadelphia who's a really large producer, and so I through those different experiences, I learned sales, I learned business development, recruiting, and kind of these different niches within inside the business. All the while, thinking I might eventually one day, have my own mortgage team or do something within lending. And that's kind of what I had always thought was going to be the case.
Sure.
But things kind of always, don't always go the way we plan. And actually, and thankfully so, because now we get to work with all sorts of. See, one day we used to be competitors, that in some cases, and I get to sit across the table now with a lot of loan officers and real estate agents, title people who maybe I did or couldn't work with or couldn't even be seen with. Because my title person would be upset I was with them.
Whoa, what's going on over here?
Exactly.
I heard you were out of the place.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny how territorial real estate is, but what it did do was it opened up this opportunity for me to brand myself within the real estate community all over South Jersey and the greater Philadelphia area, and which has now opened up opportunities in what I currently do, which is solar.
Right.
And so I was working for a really large producer in Philadelphia, and I was able to, on the side of, doing what he had asked me to do for mortgages and real estate agent connections and stuff like that. I was able to build in some time of just kind of side hustling solar, in the nights and weekends. Usually just a deal or two here and there is where it started 3 years ago. And then, the side hustle became the main hustle.
Mortgages are a pain in the butt anyway, man, for sure, man, for sure.
There's definitely a lot of things that, had played into that decision. But ultimately I felt like it was a space, it was kind of it's funny because solar is kind of it took the exterior remodeling sales that I had great experience in, and then the financing sales, which I had essentially like a living crash course, got an MBA in finance, working in mortgages for almost a decade, and the combination of those two things really are solar. Right. Because at its core, it is a financial transaction. Yes, you have panels and installation, and it works with your electric, and things like that in the home, but there is a big side of it with the tax credits. We talked about depreciation in the systems as well. There's a big financial side of it as well, and so being able to bring both of those worlds in, it really outperforms typically who is the door knocker or something like that, which you'll typically see in solar. And so having that background really has opened up a lot of doors. So I actually really truly feel like, my career has led to a moment now where I'm taking, the aggregate of these different experiences I've had along the way.
Culmination of all the
that's a great word.
Yeah, for sure.
And eventually, and now kind of being at a place where I can use those, in what I'm currently doing, which is the solar game.
Nice. And you've been doing solar for
about 3 years now. Yep.
And you just decided about a year ago, was it, to go full bore?
Full time. Yep,
right.
Exactly. It was about a year ago. It was last fall. I went full time in it. And it's not been without it. I have some scars and some
there always
cuts.
is.
Yeah, it's had its challenges and its ups and downs. I feel like if anything in solar, we've learned over the last 3 years who not to trust, because unlike our industry in mortgage, or my former industry, your industry.
Sure.
Where it's heavily regulated, people complain about that, but I'll be honest. Now that I've seen the other side of the curtain in mortgages,
regulation sucks, but non-regulation really.
Oh my gosh,
sucks.
Jim, I'll tell you that we have seen some scoundrels in this business, guys that who are just literally liars. They will say anything to not only get the deal from the client, but install full-scale installers that we're litigating right now.
Right.
We have we were owed money that as soon as the real money came in, once the job was installed, all of a sudden it was there was this adder and this thing and this and stuff that's not even in the contract, and it's
crazy.
It's really nuts what goes on in this business.
A really good friend of mine has been doing solar for like 13 years, and like a kid that I grew up with, and I talk to him all the time. And he bought a house. I did his transaction. His dad bought a house. I did his transaction. And he talks all the time about, like, oh my God, I talk to these people. And luckily, either he talks to them before they do their transaction, or unfortunately, someone goes, I got your number because my cousin said I can trust you. And then he looks at the paperwork and he's like, oh my God, I don't know how these people did all this or got him to. And so I know. Listen, any business, it's a surefire rule. If there's large commissions to be made, there's attraction. Good people are attracted to that, and scumbags are attracted to
Absolutely.
that. That's the way it goes.
100%.
The higher the commission, the higher the scumbag rate that there is. And that's just the way stuff is, you know?
Absolutely.
If you're selling shoes, no one's going to lie about the quality of your shoes because they're making $3 a pair. So
Exactly.
You're
You're
getting a $10,000 paycheck or something like that. People are going to lie. That's the way it is. There's just people with low moral fiber that get into it, no matter what it is.
No matter what it is.
Car dealerships, solar, mortgage. We've had them. You know what I mean? We have people in the mortgage industry that go through and realtors and everybody else. There's just a propensity for that.
Yes,
so
you're right.
It's good to know honest people. And really, like, I referred my buddy Al because I only know him.
Yeah.
And we had other friends that were selling solar. One of the guys, Murph, that we were talking about, he was selling solar for a while with Tesla, and a couple other mutual friends that we have were selling solar. And I'm like, listen, I don't know anything about you guys. I would never do that because I don't know who your boss is or who your people are, and I can't refer that. So it's crazy. I was wondering what's going to happen with some type of regulation.
It's coming.
I'm sure it has to, because it's just too big of a market.
It's coming. Right now, the market penetration nationwide is about 6 to 7%. So it's fairly low in terms of total people who have solar. When you
hear it, it's funny. When you hear solar, like, my mind as a salesperson thinks, well, maybe that's a good business, but I'm like, is that saturated? But it's nowhere near saturated.
In New Jersey, it's pretty saturated. So I mean, this is where, not saturated, but it's pretty busy. I mean, there's hundreds of solar companies in New Jersey. I mean, the greatest thing that we've done over the last year or two is not just learn the business and learn how the equipment works and become real experts in really the design, the sun access. I mean, we have gotten really creative with these things as well. Like, we do things that there's not a lot of solar companies out there that do. For example, pergolas, hardscapes in the backyard. If you've got a house that's got 2 dormers in the front and you can't fit enough panels, the average solar guy looks at that deal and says, okay, there's a 40% offset, meaning I can fit 40% of your power needs that your family has on the roof. The other 60% you got to get from the utility company. Well, we can do with that scenario, and that's where they stop, which is not necessarily a bad deal. They're still hedging. If I could go back in time with you and say, hey, listen, for 40% of the gasoline that you ever use, it's going to be $1.25 a gallon instead of whatever it is now, you still probably make that deal because you'd be like, well, almost half of my gas is going to be cheap, and I'll just pay market price for the rest of my gas. Well, we can get even more creative than that. We can do carports, pergolas, hardscapes. We can do some really creative things with those deals that very few people are doing.
Right.
So the difference between a lot of companies or individual solar sales guys that knock on the door or are in solar is they are 9 times out of 10 they are a solar sales organization that is connected to one installer, or they work directly for an installer themselves. Yeah. We are the flag that we fly. We have our own company, but we primarily sit underneath a national brokerage called NuSun Power, NUSUN. And if you look them up on Yahoo Finance, they're the #1 solar company in America by volume. They helped 18,000 families so far this year.
So it's almost like a loan broker.
Exactly.
You're basically almost the same in the mortgage industry as something like that. Okay.
Yeah, except sometimes in mortgages, brokers and bankers they argue in terms of who's better, who's worse, who's got better access to the underwriters, and there's a whole argument there. In our world, it really does pay to be the broker, and I'll tell you why. Because we're like the price line of solar. Mm-hmm. We can shop your deal with 24 different installers. I can tell you who's got the best price, the best equipment, the best warranties, the best financing options, the best installation practices, who overall we've done work with and we trust as an organization that's going to actually deliver on what they're saying.
Right.
And so because there's nobody above them saying that's wrong or right or overpriced or whatever. It's very self-policed.
About someone getting specialized incentives and all these other things for using this installer or that installer, where you're getting
we're keeping one installer honest against the other because we've got a myriad of options. So this person messes up a deal. I'll be honest with you. There's a company in New Jersey that we were working with that has a couple thousand Google reviews. On Google, looks squeaky clean. They have screwed up my clients, my uncle's house, my neighbor's house. They stepped through the attic on one of our jobs. They had one of their jobs denied by Evesham Township. So since January of this year, so we're going on 11 months where they're still not approved on the electrical inspection and the fire inspection. They've failed electrical and fire 11 months in a row, but online they look like the best thing since sliced bread. So we know who may look good and may not look good, but we can say from personal experience after the amount of transactions we've been in at this point, who not to trust and who to trust. And in doing so, number one, it ensures the customer gets the best price. We're doing a lot of transactions. My partners and I are we're in a lot of deals every month. So we're not trying to make all our living because this is the one door we knocked that actually said yes to us this month. We're not trying to make all our living on this one deal.
Right.
So price-wise, almost always we have the best price. And then if somebody has something specific, again, electric vehicles or, there's certain things in the mix that we need to bring into the scenario, we can do things very creatively that you're not seeing often with other companies.
And you work with mortgage companies, you work with other referral partners. So if someone's watching this and they say, hey, I think I want to work with Matt and his company, how would they get in touch with you? How would they set up a time to sit down and talk and hear what you could do with them and for them? Yes,
absolutely. Well, that's a great question. You could call my cell, 347-886-5709. You could send me an email, matt@geteasysolar.com. Or you can connect up on any of the social medias, Matt Auterson on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. But the other side of that to the real estate agent, the loan officer, the title person that might be watching, we actually have a RESPA compliant way of paying you. You can actually make money for sending us referrals. It's fully RESPA compliant, and we work with full scale mortgage companies. We work with everybody. We play nice in the sandbox with the title, the mortgage, the real estate agents, everybody all together. So this is where it's fun for us now because all these relationships we've acquired over the last couple years, we can now pivot into this, and it's been really great. So, but yeah, I know that there's a real need in the marketplace right now with where interest rates are, with where real estate agent commissions are, and all these hot button items that you're hearing about in the news. Everybody's making less right now in a sense, regardless of what side you're in. And so, one way you could diversify and recession-proof your business in 2023 and 2024 is by
streams of income, baby. Let's go.
Absolutely. Have a little, side hustle of sending. Your clients are going to go solar whether you're involved or not. Mm-hmm. You might as well send them to somebody who's trusted, who's going to walk them through the options, all the different, tax ramifications and everything else that they're going to hear and get. We can do that with them, and then on the back end you can monetize it. So it's a win-win for everybody, and the client gets great service. You get somebody that you can work with, and we all can make some money and help the client.
Awesome. All right, we're going to finish with your personal question. So we're going to go music. All right. So you can have any band, musician, performer, anything throughout time, alive or dead. They're going to come to your house on Friday night and they're going to play two songs. Who would the band or performer be, and what would the two songs be that you'd want to hear?
I think the Beatles, actually.
Okay.
And probably Hard Day's Night and oh man, I'd have to think about the second one. There's so many great options. But maybe I'll go for my nephew, Hey Jude. We'll go for,
all right.
But that's probably the Beatles if I could do that again.
Awesome, I love it. So one more time, give them your contact information just in case anyone wants to get in touch with you.
Absolutely, Matt Auterson, 347-886-5709 is the iPhone. 856-701-6693 is the desk. Or you can reach me on my email, Matt@geteasysolar.com. Matt@geteasysolar.com, or you can go to one of our websites.
Awesome,
Thank you for having me,
Thank
brother.
you so much for coming in. We'll be back with the next guest on Mr. Mortgage's Neighborhood.